Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite shows ever made, period. And I think there's a lot of people out there who share that same opinion, and a lot of people out there have already talked about it extensively. One of the most notable of those channels being Overanalyzing Avatar, who actually inspired me to make this bit of a series, and it actually kind of put me off of trying to do anything like this for the longest time because I figured, what could I possibly talk about that he hasn't already talked about, or just other creators in general haven't already talked about? But the thing is, I'm my own person. I have my own perspectives, and at the end of the day, this channel is subjectively unbiased. So what I want to do is I want to look at the series from a couple of different perspectives. I want to look at it from my own perspective, being the subjective part, and the unbiased perspective, as if I'm somebody who's never watched the show before and is just turning it on, without really any prior knowledge, and determining how good the show is from obviously my perspective, because I have a lot of personal bias towards it. But I'm curious to look at it from that lens of somebody who hasn't seen it already and seen it the 15 or 20 so times that I already have. So I'm going to jump in right at the top, right at the beginning of the series, and we're going to see how it goes. Now, obviously, you can't talk about this series without first addressing the opening credits. The opening credits for Avatar are different on the first episode only compared to the rest of the series, and it's serving less as an opening credit sequence just for the sake of having an opening credit sequence, and it's serving as exposition in this first episode. It's diving in a little bit deeper than it needs to for all the other episodes, to lay a certain level of groundwork for everybody watching. And I think that's really important, because if you're just diving into a world as rich as this is, you're going to need a little bit of context as to what's going on. And obviously the show's going to give you that context as you watch, and you're going to learn along with the characters. But there is a certain level of knowledge that you need to have before going in, and I think this beginning opening sequence on the first episode does a really good job of giving that context.
Water, earth, fire, air.
Those are the four nations that are going to serve the critical roles throughout this entire series, and it's the general groundwork for exactly what needs to be discussed. And obviously it's going with the four elements: water, earth, fire, and air.
But that all changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
We all know the meme, obviously, but that all changed when the Fire Nation attacked. But it is central to what this is. We've got the four nations, and they did live together in harmony. But when the Fire Nation decided it wanted more and the Fire Nation attacked, although we actually at this point don't know why the Fire Nation attacked, all we know is that they did. So knowing that the Fire Nation attacked, we now have an antagonist already. Interesting point as well is that here at this point, if you're just diving in, you don't know that people can bend these elements. You don't know what bending is. So as you're watching this opening sequence and you see, okay, the Fire Nation attacked, oh, these guys just did a martial arts move and fire erupts out of their hands. Okay, so now I understand the Fire Nation attacked the quote-unquote ruthless firebenders. Now you have this understanding of, okay, so these people can control fire and they're using it to their advantage at the disadvantage of everybody else that they've attacked so far. It also lays the groundwork for the understanding that there is this person, the Avatar. Obviously, they're described as the master of all four elements, but it seems to be something that people are aware is just a part of everyday life. People can bend these elements, sure, but then there is one person who can control all of them, and he's gone. It does a good job as well of giving some context of what the Fire Nation wants, without really giving any of the context of the fact that they're, looking for world domination. Obviously, yes, the Fire Nation attacked, and we don't totally know why, but when it's showing shots of destruction here and there, and it's giving that context of, okay, well, now the Fire Nation is close to winning, it sort of explains without explaining. The Fire Nation wins when everything else is pretty much destroyed, and it's just the Fire Nation left.
2 years ago, my father and the men of my tribe journeyed to the Earth Kingdom to help fight against the Fire Nation, leaving me and my brother to look after our tribe.
Throughout the majority of this exposition so far, it's a pretty standard explanation of what's going on, and it starts to lean towards Katara's perspective, specifically by then explaining that her father and the men of her tribe left to go to war, and it's her and her brother who are left protecting her tribe.
Some people believe that the Avatar was never reborn into the air nomads and that the cycle is broken. But I haven't lost hope.
It tells us pretty clearly that obviously the Avatar would have then been born into the air nomads, which kind of gives context to the fact that it's a cycle. It doesn't really get into it too much because it doesn't really need to, especially when the name of the series is Avatar: The Last Airbender, you kind of have an understanding of, okay, this Avatar is going to be an airbender.
I still believe that somehow the Avatar will return to save the world.
Last point about that intro sequence is the fact that she makes the comment that the Avatar will return to save the world, and in all the other episodes she says how she believes that Aang can save the world, because obviously at this point where she's giving this exposition to, maybe some kids in the tribe or whatever, there's no understanding of Aang. You don't know who Aang is. You don't know who it is. You just know that, okay, so by legend, it should be an airbender next, but we don't know who, we don't know where, we don't know when. So it's just kind of the ambiguity of the Avatar, whoever they are, will return to save the world in whatever means necessary. So now that we got that out of the way, we're jumping right into episode 1, The Boy in the Iceberg, which is actually part 1 of the 2-part beginning to the series, which I'll get into it a little bit later on. It's very good that they made this beginning episode 2 parts, because if you're just jumping into the show and you're just judging it off of that first episode, it's like, it's good, right? But it doesn't totally give you all that much to be like, okay, well, what happens next? It would be a sin to not address the music in this show, which you're already getting plenty of right from that introduction. It's grand, it's beautiful, but it's a very Asian-styled music, and it's an Americanized version of a lot of Asian music, but you do get a lot of more traditional sounds as the series goes on. So as you can see right from those first shots, it's cold. And if you're looking at all 4 nations as it stands, you've got water, earth, fire, and air. Which one's probably going to be located in the Arctic or the Antarctic? It's going to be the water tribe. If you're looking at the first lines in the series, the first spoken words between 2 characters, it gives you a lot of characterization.
It's not getting away from me this time. Watch and learn, Katara. This is how you catch a fish.
Right? It tells you Sokka, he's very prideful, he's very confident in what he's doing. He sees the fish, he's already got it before he's got it. He can already smell it cooking.
Sokka, look! But Sokka, I caught one!
Meanwhile, Katara, who already has a fish, she's clearly competent, and it's giving us a glimpse into what waterbending is, which is clearly this girl is controlling water. She's able to grab the water around this fish. The fish isn't injured, but she's not totally in control. She looks a little clumsy with it, and she doesn't sound super sure of herself. But now we've got both their names, Sokka, Katara, and they're part of the water tribe. She's a waterbender.
Hey!
Why is it that every time you play with magic water, I get soaked?
It's not magic, it's water bending. And it's...
Yeah, an ancient art unique to our culture, blah, blah, blah. Look, I'm just saying that if I had weird powers, I'd keep my weirdness to myself.
He's clearly not, because if he was, then he would probably have water bent the water around the fish the same way that she did, and it doesn't need to tell us that at this point in the show yet for us to already have that understanding. And also right off the bat, we get the context of the fact that people understand that this is a thing, right? It's not... He's describing her waterbending abilities as weird magic powers, but it's normal, right? He knows, every time you play with magic water. So it's introducing the magic system as being something that's not so unheard of that everyone's going to be like, oh my god, you can move water with your mind? Yeah, you can move water with your mind because you're a waterbender. It's baked in already in a way that builds the plot without, again, forcing it down your throat. And it's pretty quick about it. I mean, him explaining the magic system and then following it with a blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, an ancient art unique to our culture, blah, blah, blah.
It's like, okay, so obviously we know he's tired of it. She's clearly not tired of it. So everyone else in the world is probably going to be somewhere between those two extremes. In a weird way, this scene also kind of gives some context towards the level of danger that is apparently pretty normal to these people, where I feel like most people would be horribly shook up by the fact that they almost just got crushed to death along with their boat, which just got crushed to death and is their only way back from where they are. They're pretty casual about it. It's pretty much just another opportunity for these two siblings to have an argument.
Leave it to a girl to screw things up.
You are the most sexist, immature, nut-brained... I'm embarrassed to be related to you!
Obviously pretty clear because she just straight up says it to him. He's a bit of a misogynist, and maybe a bit is an understatement, where we don't know every aspect of their lives, but it's what she's saying.
Ever since Mom died, I've been doing all the work around camp while you've been off playing soldier.
She does so much of the work that doesn't really seem to be thanked, right? And he plays soldier, quote unquote. We don't really know what that means. We see him having a spear, but you know, if all the men in the tribe had to leave, he's going to have this complex of feeling like he should have gone with them to some degree. And we see that it pisses her off, and it's finally fed her up to the point where she's acting irrationally, or maybe she's acting perfectly rationally, if we're being honest. If that's what you're dealing with for as long as she probably has to deal with it, yeah, I'm sure it builds up and you get fed up to a point. So she reacts, she water bends, and the plot continues in a way that feels pretty natural. I mean, again, the odds of them just kind of posting up at this iceberg, you know, reasonably slim, but at the same time, it's been 100 years. You know, if it was a day and a half between when Aang went into the ice and when they stumbled across the iceberg, it's like, okay, yeah, that's a weird coincidence. It was 100 years before somebody stumbled across this iceberg. So to us, just watching the show, it's like, wow, what a coincidence. But when you compartmentalize it and when you really look at it in the sense of, oh, it's been that long that no one has stumbled across it, then it becomes a little bit more normal.
Here, we don't know what that thing is!
I feel like it's almost a bit too on the nose to make the white people comment to Katara seeing a person in an iceberg and it's glowing, and she goes,
We have to help!
And run towards it. I would be more of the Sokka where it's like, okay, let's get out of here. What are we doing? And she's going to charge in headstrong, and it's giving a little bit more of her character, right? You could consider it being headstrong, but she's so driven by this desire to help at all costs that she doesn't even consider the potential consequences that could come if, say, he's not nice, or as Sokka says,
we don't know what that thing is!
Sure, it looks like a human, but at the end of the day, it could be anything. And they've got wacky animals in this series too, so it could be a lot of things frozen in that iceberg. Speaking of wacky animals, we're given a glimpse right here of what some of the wacky animals are like. I don't even know what I would call that thing. I guess you could maybe call it a leopard seal because it's got the stripes and it looks like a seal, but clearly it's got big ass ears, so we don't have the full context of what that is, but it's clearly not just some regular animal that we're used to. Pretty quickly in this scene, it's a very good way to give some context to Zuko as well.
Finally. Uncle, do you realize what this means?
I won't get to finish my game.
It means my search. It's about to come to an end. It has to be him!
Oh, it's just the celestial light. We've been down this road before, Prince Zuko.
Iroh calls him Prince Zuko. We don't know Iroh's name yet, but Zuko refers to him as his uncle. He's searching for someone.
I need to capture the Avatar!
Oh, he's searching for the Avatar. Got it. That's all we really need to know at this point. This guy, Prince Zuko, is with his uncle searching for the Avatar, and it's clearly been a very long time. Damn, we're giving some context here too. Katara's fucking strong. You see the way she caught Aang just like that? That was crazy. Now, if I'm being honest here, I'm actually not a big fan of Aang's introduction in this series, where his first words are,
I need to ask you something. Please, come closer. Will you go penguin sledding with me?
It's like, sure, it's categorizing him as being a playful kid, right? But at the same time, once we learn the context of what happened and how he got here, you would think he would have some more questions. And he does lead into some of those questions in saying,
What's going on here?
You tell us! How'd you get in the ice? And why aren't you frozen?
I'm not sure.
Sure, but you should be somewhat aware of what you were doing and the circumstances in which you were doing it. So then you wake up and see some strange person's face and all you're thinking about is penguin sledding. It's just, and it shows a childishness that carries on through a lot of the series, but at the same time, it just feels a little weak as an introduction.
The paranoid one is my brother, Sokka. You never told us your name.
She describes Sokka as the paranoid one, but honestly, I feel like that reservation is pretty valid given the circumstances where obviously you're at war, and maybe you haven't seen war in a little while, but then something crazy like this, and like he addresses, the big beam of light, it could very well serve as a signal for the Fire Nation. So, I mean, I can't really blame Sokka for being a little paranoid here. Also, what exactly are Aang and Appa sneezing about? Are they allergic to the Antarctic air? Doesn't really track, but sure, give us context for the fact that they both sneeze very powerfully. They're both airbenders.
You're an airbender.
Sure am.
When Aang says sure am right there, it does not sound like the same voice actor. I don't know why.
A man needs his rest. Prince Zuko, even if you're right, and the Avatar is alive, you won't find him. Your father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all tried and failed.
Because their honor didn't hinge on the Avatar's capture. Mine does.
The whole scene between Iroh and Zuko here, I think is really important towards some of Iroh's characterization in a way that we don't really even get to see for probably a season, in the sense of him saying,
a man needs his rest.
And Zuko addressing the fact that he's doing this because he needs to chase his honor, and Iroh doesn't feel like he needs that. He doesn't know a way to communicate to Zuko that the honor that he's seeking isn't something he's going to earn. And it's not something that he should be fighting to earn, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be restored to him the way he thinks it is, but at the end of the day, this is all Zuko has driving him. So Iroh can't just take that away from him. All he can do is sort of try to guide him in the right direction, which I think he does a great job of throughout the series.
I guess I was wondering, you're being an airbender and all? If you had any idea what happened to the Avatar.
I didn't know him. I mean, I knew people that knew him, but I didn't. Sorry.
I also think it's ever so slightly strange that Aang is talking about the Avatar in the past tense, because she's saying what happened to the Avatar. So sure, obviously something happened to him, but it just feels like a weird way that Aang's talking about it, where from his perspective, again, he doesn't know that it's been 100 years. He doesn't know that, to other people's perspective, the Avatar's gone. So I don't know if he's just thinking that she's talking about the Avatar before him, but it's just an odd way of having that conversation. After Aang has his very expository dream, how did he get there and undressed? Like, does he just not remember pulling into the tent and taking his clothes off? Or, like, did they bring him into the tent while he's sleeping, then strip him, and then he wakes up? Look, if I was Aang, I'd be a little bit more concerned than that.
No one has seen an airbender in 100 years. We thought they were extinct, until my granddaughter and grandson found you.
Extinct?
Just another touch of that music that I love so much in this series. When Aang says extinct, and he's shocked by it, that musical sting right there is just so good. It really gives that sense of foreboding of, oh, okay, so Last Airbender obviously gives us the context that there's only one airbender. But what did happen? Why are they using the word extinct like that? It's a really good way of building curiosity.
Last time I checked, humans can't fly.
Check again.
I understand that there's no airbenders over the course of time that Sokka's been alive, but he should have at least understood that in the past, airbenders could fly using their gliders to some degree. So him saying humans can't fly like that, it's like, all right, well, you clearly know that he's an airbender from what you've seen so far. So why are you acting like an ass clown when now he's talking about flying? That snow just killed Sokka. Rip Sokka.
I sense he's filled with much wisdom.
See? Now let's step like this.
I'm personally a big fan of Aang's wisdom right there. I think that's just something important to teach these kids early on.
Again. No, power in firebending comes from the breath, not the muscles. The breath becomes energy in the body. The energy extends past your limbs and becomes fire. Get it right this time.
There's something so well done about this introduction to firebending as a combat system, and also just bending in general. We've seen it used for pulling fish out of the water, or, Aang airbending here and there, but we haven't really seen it as a martial art yet. So it's being expressed as a martial art from a master, clearly, in Iroh. He's explaining that it comes from the breath, he's explaining how to do it, and he launches a blast of fire right at Zuko that Zuko doesn't flinch at, and Iroh throws at him because he knows he can control it. So it's giving us context that, okay, Iroh is clearly a very powerful and talented bender, and Zuko respects him and understands that, but that respect only extends so far because he wants to get what he wants more than anything else. And it's interesting too because Iroh is kind of portrayed as being a little bit of a fool, and I don't know if that's the right word to use, but as you go, it really becomes more obvious that he's so much wiser than even what he puts on at times, and he's trying to teach this level of patience to Zuko, who so clearly needs that level of patience, but he's just not mature enough to be at that point because he's so single-minded and set on what he wants to attain.
How can we call ourselves men?
I gotta pee.
That means no potty breaks.
But I really gotta go.
Okay, who else has to go?
I Gotta Pee Kid is probably the most relatable character in this series, if you're me.
Gran said he disappeared over an hour ago.
Wow, everything freezes in there.
I've always really liked the everything freezes in there comment. It's very childish, and it's showing that this show is still kind of getting its legs underneath it in the sense of, okay, we're on Nickelodeon, this has to be a kid's show to some degree, so let's make a quick potty joke, ha ha ha. But I like that potty joke, that's pretty funny.
What's wrong with you? We don't have time for fun and games with a war going on.
What war? What are you talking about?
Once again, we get another mysterious sting going on with the music when Aang is questioning what Sokka's talking about with the war. And he's saying, well, what are you talking about? Because he doesn't know anything about a war. He ran away just before that, as we're given the context for much later in the series. But again, it's those little musical notes that this show just does so well in building the audio environment for everything that's going on screen.
What war? What are you talking about?
You're kidding, right? He's kidding, right?
And then we're pretty much again distracted right away from, clearly, it's a pretty serious topic about war, and even he stopped what he was doing and say, what are you talking about, a war? Then he sees a fucking penguin and he's got to go chase after it. It's that level of childishness that is shown of Aang in this first episode that almost makes Aang not really that compelling of a protagonist, because it's like, well, he clearly doesn't give that much of a damn about what's going on if he's going to run away from understanding about an actual war that's taking place because he saw a penguin, and all he's focused on is penguin sledding.
What about the North Pole? There's another water tribe up there, right? Maybe they have waterbenders who could teach you.
Maybe. But we haven't had contact with our sister tribe in a long time.
Appa and I can personally fly you to the North Pole. Katara, we're gonna find you a master.
This show does a great job of laying the groundwork for what is going to be happening later in the series. And it does it so well right here, where they're having this conversation about her. It's about Katara. It's focused on Katara and Aang a little bit. And it introduces the North Pole. It introduces this concept of going to the North Pole to learn from an actual master, because there's no masters to learn from in the South Pole. So it's already setting up beautifully that plot line of we're going to the North Pole. And it does so kind of without addressing it immediately. It's just like a quick toss away, like, well, you think about it, and then back to being a kid. But in the grand scheme of things, it's perfectly laying the groundwork for what the rest of the season's going to be. It's introduced almost immediately, right in the first episode, but it takes all season to actually pay off to get to the point where they're at the North Pole, and I think that does a really good job of giving people something to hang on to, even at the points where it might not seem like that's the most important thing. While Aang is riding that penguin, he gives the laugh that he gives in the intro to the series, and you'll hear it every single episode if you watch the intro, which, I'm not going to say I do, but I do it. Sorry. Oops.
I haven't done this since I was a kid. You still are a kid.
We also get some pretty important context about Katara here, because again, she's saying that she hasn't gone penguin sledding since she was a kid, and Aang has to remind her that you are still a kid. And it's that forced reality of being a young person during troubled times in the world, where it feels like you have to grow up too fast, and it's easy to lose sight of the fact that you are still young and in your youth, even though you've had to strip yourself of that to some degree to do the important things that need to be done. Just a little rude that they didn't even give a tip to the penguins afterwards. Like, they're clearly standing there like, hello? Like, they've got the card reader out and it's on the tip screen, 15, 25, 30%, and, you know, they're just gonna fucking walk away and be distracted by this ship. Well, those penguins are gonna be waiting for their tip, I swear to God.
Whoa! What is that?
A Fire Navy ship, and a very bad memory for my people.
Yet again, another instance of the show doing a really good job of setting things up right at the beginning. We see this ship, it's the first episode of the series, and we don't hear about it again, but we see why it's there, and it gets all brought back at basically the end of the last season. Like, it takes a long time, but at that point we now have everything behind us to the point where we can really recognize the importance of that ship and what it's doing there.
Aang, stop! We're not allowed to go near it. The ship could be booby-trapped.
Booby.
Think about it. The war is a century old. You don't know about it because, somehow, you were in there that whole time. It's the only explanation.
100 years. I can't believe it.
Obviously, I don't really know exactly how I would react if I was just given the information that I've been trapped in an iceberg for 100 years and shirked all of my responsibilities for that amount of time. But him just sitting down and going, I can't believe it, always felt a little bit underwhelming for me, just on the delivery.
Hold on tight! Ah!
I just gotta make the point right here. Aang's strong like bull in this scene, right? Okay, I mean, yeah, sure, maybe he's like bending the air underneath Qatar to make her lighter, but I mean, he really just scooped that bitch off the floor, then jumped a story out of the fucking ship's hold, and is then jumping with her to get down the hill. I'm just saying, that's pretty impressive. Homie's got some legs. This is not the only time we're going to hear this little bit of music, but it is just so good. The series has such good music all throughout, and I just cannot praise it highly enough. I gotta state the obvious here, we all know it, but Zuko, that's tough as fuck, bro. That was dope as shit. That narrowing of the eyes, he's just so cool. He's such a good antagonist. It's so expertly done. Right, so I'm going to dive into a bit of an overall discussion about the episode from that subjective perspective and an unbiased perspective. Subjectively, I think it's good. I think knowing the direction that the entire series takes and how that quality continues to build as the series goes on, it's a little tough to watch this first episode. It's that childishness that comes with being a Nickelodeon show that hasn't yet quite found its footing as more than just being a kids show on Nickelodeon, but I do still love seeing those things that then get built up to later in the series, whether it's the whole plot line about traveling to the North Pole. I think that's really important that they seeded here, and then they'll explain it more, obviously diving into at the end of the next episode, part 2. But then even just the ship, again, we see the ship, and it could just come off as a one-off thing. You know, it's just it's an old Fire Navy ship. It's here now. It obviously ran ashore pretty much and froze where it is, or it was stuck where it, whatever. Like, you don't really think that much of it until then you realize, oh, the Water Tribe trapped this ship. They did this themselves, but unfortunately it still wasn't enough, and we get all the context that's explained in The Puppet Master. From an unbiased perspective, I can see it being a bit tough to get into this series if you're just watching this episode. Without knowing where it goes and how it's going to get there, it comes off as a bit childish. Aang's characterization is a little bit lax in a way that I think could be a little tough to get over to some degree. I don't think it's an impossible hurdle, obviously, with as many people who have watched the show have watched it, but I think if you're watching it as it airs on Nickelodeon, like I did, for example, when I watched this growing up, I saw the first episode, I saw everything as it happens, but it's kind of, you watch it because it's what's there. In the world of streaming, if you're just saying, oh, I've heard about this Avatar show, and you throw on the first episode, you could go, it's all right. I'll see what else is on. You don't feel all that compelled to go into the next bit, except for the fact that it's a part 1 of 2. So if you know that there's a part 2 to the episode coming up and it says to be continued like it does at the end of the episode here, then it's this understanding of, okay, well, I'll see where it goes from there. And in my opinion, I think that the second part of this episode does a better job of driving people to continue watching the series. I think that first episode is just, it's a little slow. And I think if I was watching it for the first time, I don't even want to say slow. I think if I was just watching it for the first time, it's not entirely compelling as to what you're going to see going forward. It doesn't give context to the fact that you're going to see some crazy, impressive fight scenes that really take advantage of that magic system and the way that it's used as a combat style. But I think overall, it's still a good episode and it's a good way to start the series. But again, from my perspective, I think that the show gets so much better that it is a little bit of a challenge to just go back and start watching episode 1. So I've yapped plenty about that first episode so far. I wasn't sure if I was going to blend in the second episode as part of this video, just because they are part 1 and part 2 of basically the same thing. But given that I've yapped for about 25 minutes and I need to cut it down a little bit, I'm probably going to leave this here and I'm going to dive into probably just recording and editing the next video, so I'll hopefully have that out pretty soon. But yeah, that's going to be sort of the format that I'm looking to go for with these videos. I would love to do more of a watch-along style with it, but unfortunately the way that copyright works, I don't know what I'm even going to be able to get away with. I have to be very careful with how I edit this video in the first place. So we're going to see how it goes, see if Nickelodeon decides to rail me up the ass. Who knows? But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this first episode. But episode 2 should be out soon because it's a lot shorter. I had a lot less to say about it just because obviously it's now not the first episode of a series, but I still could probably end up rambling for another 20 minutes. So hopefully you'll join me for that. If you liked this video, please leave a like. If you've got something to say, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear it. We can have some discourse in the comments. Follow me on my socials and be sure to subscribe because I am planning on doing this for the whole series. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, I'd like to still do some more gaming stuff, but at the end of the day, this channel is subjectively unbiased. I wanted to do a lot more review type content, and I really just haven't had the means of doing so, or at least the motivation to do so the right way. So I would really like to see how far I could get with this. I'd love it if people loved it, but if not, obviously, whatever, you move on. But I'd like to see it through as best as possible. So thanks for watching, and I will have more content out soon.